Hello, I am Roque, and today I'm gonna show you an etude I composed specifically for you to learn and assimilate and integrate this language we worked on last week, the consecutive chromatic below approach licks. But now you want it to become second nature to your playing. So stick with me and I'll show you how you're gonna achieve that. There are a few goals you can achieve through composing an etude to assimilate language into your playing. Number one, you have to visualize what beats do you have to start this lick on in order for it to work and resolve the way you want it to resolve. Because sometimes if you don't have this idea clearly, the lick won't work when you play it. Number two, you can experiment many variations, especially when you resolve a 5-1 lick. So many different resolutions. Number three, it takes you way closer to a real life scenario. So here you can experiment how this lick would work in a real life situation. Sometimes we practice exercises to get better at improvisation, but oftentimes I've realized they don't work unless you bring them into the music. If you stick with the exercise, it's gonna be an exercise forever. For example, last week we learned how to approach an arpeggio like Oscar Peterson was doing, like this. Right? So something I would do as an exercise is to move this pattern through a major key, right? I can do the B flat major key, right? And so on, right? But because I'm not practicing this over a chord progression like a 2-5-1 where I have to be very specific on what I play on top of each chord, this sort of exercise sometimes doesn't translate directly until you figure out a way of playing this on a musical context and you try it and you can figure out like how long can I go. Maybe I shouldn't play the whole arpeggio, or maybe I should do half of the arpeggio. We don't know, right? So you figure it out and you try a few ways and you choose what you like the most and what makes more sense musically in regards to whatever you want to achieve, like what kind of resolution you want to have, maybe on what beat you want to end, and those kind of things. You can experiment a lot when you're creating an etude. And the other thing that you'll see is that, for example, for this specific lick, I'm not using this fingering, I'm using this one. Right? Because in G major, if I want to play over here, I cannot use the fingering I was doing, right? So then I cannot approach the other notes over here. This is something as guitarists that we must master as well. Some of the licks we learn, we have to learn with different fingerings. Same with arpeggios and scales. Let's dive into the etude together. The etude starts with just something I usually play on major chords that I really like, and it's this. But then on the following chord, which is a B flat diminished 7th chord, right? We play the C diminished seventh arpeggio, this one. It is the arpeggio that's a whole step above the B flat diminished seventh arpeggio, right? So it means that here we have all available tensions of the B flat diminished seventh chord. So here you have the ninth, right? Like here, this is the major seventh. Here you have the flat 13. And here you have the 11th. And those are all of the tensions you have within a diminished seventh chord. So this is the Miles Davis lick.
Mac Davis? Yeah, I like him. Good singer.
From Gingerbread Boy, right? And here, instead of approaching my chord tones, I'm approaching the tensions, right? After I've targeted every tension of this chord, I start descending chromatically towards the third of the next chord. Right? And this is the half step pattern that we learned last week, right? Right? And that's just a standard 2-5-1 lick that I use, right? And that's the Miles Davis lick, and it's exactly the same as we learned from the Gingerbread Boy solo. But on the Gingerbread Boy solo, it was only meant for one chord. You can see here how I turn this lick into a lick that works for two different chords, you see? Because my thought behind it was this. So here, this diminished, as I told you, I was targeting the tensions, right? But I know that this C diminished I was thinking about works the same way as a D7th, you know? These are exchangeable. So I can combine this sound for both of these chords, and that's why this lick sounds great for these two chords. Because I was thinking only one chord, which was the D7, all through this, and that's why it works perfectly. Okay, so now after I do that 2-5-1 lick, I start playing double time, right? And this is the lick from Chris Potter.
Mr. Potter.
Chris is just so masterful.
So here the chord progression is the following. We have a G minor 6, right? And then we have an F sharp 7. So what I do here is I use the Chris Potter lick the same way he uses it. So I do, right? And this is the whole step approach. Remember that? But then I use the same Chris Potter lick, right? I continue using it for the same chord, just the same way he did it on his recording. But then I extend this line into the next chord, and I do the whole step pattern for the following F sharp 7th chord, like this. You see? So then, right? It's great. You can use this lick for any sort of chromatic motion where you have a minor 7th chord or a half diminished chord or a dominant 7th chord. So for example, in autumn leaves where you have this. Here it would sound perfect because all of those chords have ninth, root, and flat 7, right? Check it out. This also works great for non-chromatic 2/5s, just regular 2/5s. For example, at the end of Stella by Starlight, you have this chord progression. Right? So here I can do that and I'll target 9th, root, and flat 7 for the E, right? Then for the A, flat 13, flat 5, and then major 3rd. And then the same for the following chord. So check it out. Sounds like this. Amazing, right? I just love this approach. So let's keep going. So next, we use the Bill Evans lick.
You know what it is, don't you? Bill Evans jazz band.
On this part of the etude. And on this break solo, originally, Bill Evans goes from a D7 altered to a G major 7th, right? And he does this. So here is where he does the resolution, right? When he gets to the 3rd. So here I did the same, but going from an F sharp 7th to a B7, because we have that resolution from dominant to dominant. We can use this lick. It works almost the same as a 5/1, right? So I am doing this instead of what Bill Evans did originally, that was this. Right? I didn't do that. So I could resolve the lick in many ways. I don't have to do it like Bill. I could also do, right? That's another way. You can experiment with how you want to resolve the licks or how you want to change them, right? So here now we are at the B7th chord, and what I do next is something Bill Evans also did in his other solo from Periscope, and is I approach the 3rd and the flat 9 of the chord, right? And then the next chord is an E7th, right? And on Bill Evans' recording, it goes from B7 to B flat 7. And what Bill does is this. So when he gets to the B flat, he targets the sharp 11th, right? And then the 3rd. But B flat 7th and E 7th are substitutes. So E7 is the sub 5 of B flat, right? Or backwards, right? So I can use the same lick for both chord progressions, this or this. So it sounds like this, right? But when I'm playing the E, I'm playing the root and the flat 7th, right? So what happens next is the following. I use the 251 lick of Oscar Peterson.
Pete, Oscar Pete, and all those guys,
but for a different chord progression. So this chord progression is this. So, and then we go to the back to the 1, right? So And here I have this 2/5 at the end, right? But in my mind, I'm only thinking of that G7th for improvising in this moment for when I composed the etude. So you have this, right? So I'm thinking of a 4th chord, a dominant 7th, like a blues sound, right? And that's the sound you get on this tune. So we are approaching this G, right? So, and we are getting there the same way Oscar Peterson did with the 2/5, like this. Although this is not the same chord progression, we don't have this going on, right? It works because for this chord, we play the C major triad that has all the available tensions, right? And here, once we get to the A, we start playing all the right notes, right? And then we start arpeggiating the G. So it sounds like this. Perfect, right? And that's the whole etude. I hope you've learned a lot with this video and you like, share, and subscribe. And there's more coming up soon. See you next week.